Hello, and welcome to another edition of TechKnow, the series designed to get business leaders moving to the drumbeat of new and emerging technologies. We're concluding our AI mini-series by looking ahead at AI's future in the workplace. In previous episodes, we've discussed how AI works and what it can do. Now it's time to explore how it affects the people that build it and use it. What does a beneficial and fair AI-driven future look like? And what are the consequences of the alternative? Helping me to deconstruct and demystify is a business leader and board advisor, championing inclusion and equality in technology. As CEO of Mindweaver, Kit Ahweyevu is at the forefront of building sustainable technology for the future with diverse and digital talent. I spoke with her earlier. Welcome to TechKnow, Kit.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. Thanks so much for joining us. As you know, this is quite concise. So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in by tackling the elephant in the room head on. So the question is AI here to get the best out of us, or is it coming to take our jobs?
Yes and no, it's definitely here to get the best out of us. With AI, we can do things, much quicker and faster, and in some cases with more accuracy than humans can. And because of that, more and more of what we do and the things that we build and the decisions that we make will be supported by AI, and that's going to have huge benefits for the work that we're able to do. And so, I think that AI will get the best out of people by removing the mundane or the repetitive or time-consuming aspects of what we do, which is a good thing. But there are fears about mass unemployment that might come from that. And I think we should think about the changes more in terms of duties than jobs. And if all of that is managed correctly, then actually that should give us the opportunity to grow and develop other skills and apply ourselves to more complex and hopefully more interesting aspects of our work. And I think that's something that we're all aiming for. Mm-hmm. But to the second part of your question, I think it's important to acknowledge that in some cases, AI and automation will lead to displacement. That's something that we can't ignore.
Okay.
There are some roles that could be fully automated. For example, current thinking is that it's about 5 to 7% of roles. Actually, that's a pre-COVID figure, so we can expect that to change because COVID's obviously accelerated the need for automation to help us combat some of our challenges, space and being away from each other and things like that. So that percentage might actually be higher, and the impact might be felt more quickly. And so we need to think about the implications of that on the workforce and what our responsibility as business leaders is in that. But that being said, I'm still leaning with the optimists that that if we manage things correctly, we should create more jobs than we lose as a result of AI. But they'll just be different jobs. There'll be AI adjacent roles or roles that exist purely because AI exists. So that's something that we've got to kind of communicate and manage to make sure that we're bringing people kind of along with us.
I think that's really interesting, really important. And in previous episodes, we talked about the tremendous amount of value that can be created for business growth. And now you're uncovering for us the tremendous amount of value that can be created for individuals being able to do more fulfilling work and so forth. How do we go about pursuing that value in a sustainable and responsible way? What do business leaders need to be thinking about first and foremost as they tackle that question?
A major thing for us to think about is, how do we make that ethical and how do we make that equitable for the various groups that we look after as business leaders? So kind of taking it not past the technology component and looking at the people component as well. So, when we talk about displacement, for example, we need to be thinking about workforce augmentation and making that a key pillar of our AI strategy. So not just focusing on what new people do we need to bring in to make these things work, but, what are we doing with our current workforce? What opportunities will we be creating for them? And what does that look like? And I think we've got to start looking at this component of the AI strategy through an EDI lens, so equality, diversity and inclusion, and I would include anti-racism in that as well. And I know that might sound separate from AI thinking, but actually when displacement occurs, it tends to impact certain groups, and that should make sense when you think about the type and the level of role that's ripe for automation. So we're likely to be talking about Black and brown people, we're likely to be talking about women or older people, for example. So that's something that AI leaders need to bear in mind when they're making decisions about opportunities. What does opportunity mean, and who are these opportunities for? These things might sound esoteric, but actually I think that the impact of not asking these questions is actually quite concrete, and making those kind of questions part of the process is actually a kind of a necessary aspect of making sure everything we do is ethical and equitable.
So you talk specifically about diversity, and I'd love to go a little bit deeper there. Imagine you're a business leader that is just now starting to think about setting up their plan to implement AI in some of their business processes. What are some of the diversity, just top line watch outs that people need to be thinking about?
Thinking about what are the practices and processes that go into our decisions about who we keep and who we don't, and how our workforce changes, and looking at that's quite important from a policy and process. So because there are biases in our decision making for who gets the new opportunities and who doesn't. So that's definitely really important. And I actually want to stress that that's not something that should be pushed to your EDI lead or your head of people. Diversity and equity kind of an anti-racism bit is as much a kind of a tech thing as it is a people thing. And kind of connected to that is the fact that we're already seeing kind of the harmful effects of a lack of diversity. So if you're a leader in AI, that's definitely something that we need to be thinking about, because it has a material impact on the products that are kind of being taken to market, and the decisions that our algorithms are making, which is definitely a good reason for AI leaders to be shining an EDI light on this from the word go, and making sure that that we also debias our data sets is a huge kind of factor in it as well, because it's the combination of poor diversity and biased data sets that's kind of taken us to a point of crisis, if you like.
Okay.
And we've kind of got to admit that that's the case, and kind of and sort of move on from there to make sure that we kind of combat those issues around codified bias and systemic discrimination, and make sure that we're dealing with that with some urgency, because AI is already quite integrated.
I love what you said, that diversity is as much a tech thing as it is a people thing. And the more we can be purposeful and be thinking about that from the very beginning of our AI or automation strategy, the better off we're going to be. It's probably pretty hard to go backwards and bake that in.
Oh, absolutely. And we're already seeing kind of the consequences, right? We've got facial recognition software that mistakes women for men, and
right.
And Black people for animals, and but also actually when you talk about diversity, we tend to talk about the results, but we also need to think about the tolerance for errors as well. And what I mean by that is, for example, last year the Home Office they launched a passport checking service. I don't know if you remember this, and it had issues handling certain shades of skin it couldn't recognize. And this actually stuck with me from the reporting at the time. They said that the overall performance was judged as sufficient to deploy, but it doesn't recognize some shades of skin. So how is that, okay? And so you wonder, how diverse was the room that decision was made in to launch that product? And you have to, have these conversations with ourselves and make sure that we're increasing diversity at every stage of the process, but at every part as well of the kind of the pathways.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, if I do say so. I mean, just our standards aren't high enough, and continually pushing them up in this area has got to be the aim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we could talk about this I mean, for days and days, but we don't have that kind of time on TechKnow. I'm going to ask you if you had one or two resources that you would recommend to one of the leaders that's viewing this right now that wants to go a bit deeper. What would be your real top recommendations for our virtual shelf?
I would suggest reading Weapons of Math Destruction by Cathy O'Neill. I think she's brilliant. And also follow everything that Renee Cummings is up to. She is an AI ethicist and is really kind of taking the fight to make sure that AI decisions are equitable and ethical. So she's fantastic.
Amazing. We'll link to both of those resources in the show notes. And just one last question for you. What's coming up for Kit?
So the COVID calendar is a bit up in the air, but I've got a panel in October and one in November. So I'm with SAP in the digital skills practice in October, talking about diversity and digital skills. And then I've got another one in November about whether AI has come to save or replace us, which is a constant theme. So I'll be updating about those on LinkedIn and company page and things like that.
Fantastic. We'll link to all of those as well. And can't thank you enough for spending some time and dropping some knowledge on TechKnow. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Cheers.
Well, that concludes our AI series. Hopefully this has been helpful in busting a few myths, clearing the fog, and pointing you in the direction of successful AI deployment. As always, please subscribe to our channel if you like what you see, and comment below. What would you like to see us tackle next? How is technology impacting your industry or even your life in general? Let us know. Next up on TechKnow, we're tackling hyper-automation. So I'll see you then.